Just to summarise what we've looked at in terms of digestion and absorption of fats, we learned that lipids are the desired store of energy rather than glycogen because they're non-polar and a concentrated source of energy. We learned that fats are stored in three places: muscle, visceral, so around organs, and subcutaneous adipose, and that it can sustain you for 15 kilograms of subcutaneous adipose can sustain you for 50 days. Fats have various uses in skin, membranes, for insulation, vitamin absorption, and to make hormones such as eicosanoids from arachidonic acid, which regulate blood pressure and modulate the immune system and inhibit sticky platelets. And fat is the desirable source of energy in the fasted state, which is therefore crucial to health. Then fatty acids are metabolized by an initial step which requires 1 ATP. Then beta oxidation cycle happens, which produces 5 ATP per round, which then there's 7 rounds. And then the fatty acyl-CoAs form acetyl-CoA, which enters the citric acid cycle, giving a total of 130 ATP. Vitamins A, E, D, and K. A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble, and vitamin A deficiency results in cirrhosis, xerophthalmia, hypokeratosis, and keratosis pilaris. Hypervitaminosis A, however, that results in general symptoms such as hair loss, nausea, irritability, pain. Jaundice is an important one, and eating polar bear liver can give you hypervitaminosis A. Vitamin D, one of the sources of it is the 7-cholesterol in the skin, which is changed by sunlight in the liver and then finally activated in the kidney. Vitamin D deficiency causes less calcium absorption, and it's also associated with cancer. Vitamin E comes from vegetable oils and is an antioxidant, so it protects you against cancer and cardiovascular diseases. And vitamin E deficiency is associated with neurological problems. Vitamin K, on the other hand, comes from intestinal bacteria and allows the carboxylation of glutamates, which are involved in binding calcium, and it also allows blood coagulation. So if you have vitamin K deficiency, you'll have uncontrolled bleeding, bone calcification, and calcium deposited in the arteries. The 3 essential fatty acids is linoleic, linolenic, and arachidonic acid, and deficiency results in a variety of symptoms, which I've put in 3 categories: skin, you'll get dry, dermatitis, blood, and general symptoms as well, such as immune deficiency due to the lack of eicosanoids, which come from arachidonic acid. It's important to remember that fat also has an immune function because the body stores harmful chemicals inside fat to protect the vital organs from it. Lipids can be non-polar, triglycerides and sphingolipids, but they can also be polar, which is phospholipids. There's various sources of fat, such as bile, which is inside the body, and dietary fat, which comprises of triglycerides 90%, phospholipids 5%, and 5% cholesterol, which is esterified or unesterified. Fats are first mechanically disrupted by food prep, chewing, gastric churning, squirting into the duodenum, and intestinal peristalsis, and the purpose of this mechanical disruption is to increase the surface area. And fats are also stabilized as an emulsion using the cholesterol, lipids, and proteins, which form the bile and bile salts. They're first digested by lingual and gastric lipases, which produces diglycerides and fatty acids, and the lipases are inactivated by pancreatic protein enzymes, proteases, and cystic fibrosis is a problem in the pancreas, so you won't get this inactivation. The short-chain fatty acids are absorbed straight away into the blood, whereas the long-chain fatty acids, they remain in the core. As I said, cystic fibrosis extends gastric acid activity, alleviating fat malabsorption slightly. And in the duodenum, fat is emulsified by bile and digested by lipases from acinar cells because the fat stimulates the eye cells to release cholecystokinin, which causes bile salt release and pancreatic lipase release. The pancreatic lipases, they require 4 things for full activity. They require fatty acids, bile salts, colipase, and an alkaline environment. And the colipase acts as an anchor to allow the lipase to be absorbed onto the emulsion surface with the bile salts and digest the triglycerides. Talked about the mechanism of lipase and the fact that it hydrolyzes the first and third ester bonds. And we looked at some of the other enzymes involved in fat digestion. So you've got the lipases, pancreatic, bacterial lipases, carboxyl ester hydrolase from the pancreas that deals with the cholesterol esters, and phospholipase A2 dealing with the phospholipids. Looked at the fact that the emulsion droplet is hydrolyzed by the lipases, gets smaller and smaller, it buds off to form a multi-lamellar vesicle, and then a unilamellar vesicle, and finally a micelle. which is bile salts, lipids, and fatty acids. The products of lipolysis, they need to cross 3 layers: the mucus layer, the unstirred water layer, and the apical membrane. And they cross the apical membrane by 3 methods. We have to remember that the short and long-chain fatty acids, they have varying efficiencies of crossing the unstirred water layer. At the apical membrane, they encounter a low pH, and then they cross the apical membrane by these 3 methods. The remaining bile salts then enter the enterohepatic circulation so that they can keep going round, keep forming the micelles to allow the absorption. And then once they're absorbed, the short-chain fatty acids, they move straight into the blood, whereas the long-chain, they're reesterified. They're bound to fatty acid proteins, which is shown here, to prevent leakage, toxicity, and ensure their travel to smooth endoplasmic reticulum. They're reesterified to chloroglycerides and bound to apoproteins to form chylomicrons, and chylomicrons are processed and exocytosed into the lymph, blood, and to organs. When they reach the organs, the chylomicrons are digested by lipoprotein lipase, a membrane protein, into fatty acids and glycerol, as well as remnant chylomicrons, which go to the liver. And in the liver, the remnant chylomicrons are converted to very low-density lipoproteins to transport cholesterol. One of the things I forgot to mention is that orlistat is an obesity drug, and what orlistat does is it inhibits lipase, so it inhibits the hydrolysis of triglycerides by inhibiting lipase. So the triglycerides aren't digested, so it's going to stop you from absorbing the fat. And finally, we looked at the various causes of fat malabsorption, such as lymphatic causes, intestinal causes, liver and pancreas causes, as well as the bile duct itself, resulting in no bile secretion.